Okay, I am going to shy a little bit away from majority of content I ever want to do is about CPS and the court systems. And even though I watch a lot of YouTube, I mean, it's something I started watching in the last 6 months to a year. I never really was into YouTube, and this is kind of how I got the idea to start this channel. I also watch true crime. I'm like really like if you don't notice into dispelling the false narrative of Gypsy Rose and some other true crime. And I also watch some political commentaries. One of my favorites is Tennessee Brando. But sometimes if you watch YouTube, you do notice that sometimes stuff will come up in your like to watch or we thought you'd like this or something. And the other day, um, this gal, um, and I'm assuming she's in England because she has an English accent, or she was originally from England. I don't know where she lives. She could be in America. I don't know. But she's talking about Disney adults, and maybe she's just talking about America living across the pond because she wants to. I don't know. But I only saw one video she did, and it was about Disney adults, which, yeah, I'm not a Disney fan. I went once, just once, and that's all I'll ever do. Um, I just value my money. I don't enjoy wasting it. I have a bipolar son and other children and grandchildren that I want to save up for and leave them something for when me and my husband are gone. But this Sydney twat, and I'm going to call her twat because she's English, I assume. And, over in England, it basically just kind of a foolish person. And I think she is because she did, and I don't know when she did this, I don't remember the date on it, but she did this video about Alan Ritchson that he sucks. And I only watched a little bit because I just could only stomach so much of it, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And then I read some of the comments, and a lot of MAGAs want to call themselves now just straight conservatives. They want to walk away, but yet still stick up for Trump, right? But, anyways, she was showing a couple podcasts he was on where he was really angry. And I understand anger because if you watch most of my videos, my anger comes out of the atrocities in society. Okay. You know, my what drives me is my knowledge in CPS, adoption courts, and stuff like that. And what drives me is not the reformation of CPS in the adoption industry, but the abolishment of it. I want to see it all done away with and restructured. And if that means it's going to be all criminal court where parents get a contract, and if they're negligent, they have to follow the contract and they're followed by a probation officer. You know, maybe parents will fix their shit before it even gets to criminal court. But the civil shit where it's all for money, no, we got to get rid of that. But, anyways, back to Alan Ritchson. And I think I said his name wrong. Right. I don't really know him that well. And I think she shared a couple clips of him on two podcasts that he did almost back to back or something like that. One I think was Dax Shepard's, which I don't really watch any of those. I don't watch Joe Rogan. I'm not a big, just regular podcast fan. Like I said, I like political commentary. Like what's her name? I think it's Park Rose Permaculture, something like that. But there's some really good people, Katie Fang, stuff like that. Um, that I'll watch, and I also watch a lot of anti-Gypsy Rose content creators. Okay. So I don't know too much. I know my husband and I guess one thing I can really say about him when I researched him was he came out as bipolar with ADHD. And I really applaud him for that. I applaud for someone who has a platform to come out and talk about their struggles or their goals or their gains or whatever. And I could also say this, he's not bad to look at. Now, my husband and I, the only thing I really started watching, and I know he claims to be a Christian, um, was his show. I think it's called Reacher or something like that. And we liked it, but it was just too violent and just too vulgar for me, to be honest. And I kind of see, to me as a Christian, I couldn't, do that kind of stuff. But I just couldn't watch it. I just didn't feel right about it. It was just, I just couldn't watch all the vulgarness and death and blood and stuff like that. I just don't like, I like if I watch something that may have murder in it, that it's not really showing, brains and stuff splatter, blood splatter and stuff like that. So, anyways, so I know a little bit about him. But what I do know is, although he wasn't born in Florida, and he was born in exactly a town I know of because I know of that Florida town he was raised in because my daughter lived there once. I'm very familiar with the town. It's backwoods, Florida Panhandle. Probably 99.9% of them voted MAGA or MAGA. I can guarantee that. Almost guarantee. I would have to look at it. Now, I'm not going to say that people born and raised in Florida all come out MAGA because that's not true. At one point, it was somewhat a purple state. So obviously, there are independents and liberals there. I'm an independent. I am ashamed to say because my family is very MAGA. My father, my sister, they literally have like stuff all over their car, you know, like I think my sister even has like a cling in her back window of Trump's head like he's riding in her car. I mean, Trump banner flags and stuff she does. It's that bad. But I was the smart sister and she wasn't. I guess she was probably the prettier sister and I was a smarter sister. Although when I was a baby I was the prettier one. I got smarter, she got prettier, maybe. I don't know. Anyhow, so um, I don't know how his family led, but you would think him being raised there. I know he wasn't born there, but being raised, 10, 15, 20 years there in Florida, that he'd be MAGA than anti-MAGA. But as it turns out, he is, which is fine for him. Because, like I said, I was raised in a MAGA family. A definite 2A amendment, people, as to where one of my uncles wrote a book on owning guns and gun safety. They're very gun people, hunting up in Maine, gun people. So I'll admit that, I find a lot of children that are raised in a certain religion and a certain political family, they kind of inherit that. And once they start getting older, they start seeing things differently than their parents do. Not always, but a lot of us do. So around COVID, I voted for Trump the first time. I'm ashamed to say that, but I hate Hillary Clinton. I absolutely hate Hillary Clinton. And to me, the only reason why, if Hillary Clinton hadn't created the American Safe Families Act, I always mix it up, ASFA or AFSA, whatever. In 1997, I believe it was, I wouldn't hate her so much. But she's the cause of the destruction, her and her husband, and I hate them for that. Not for all the scandals they've been part of, but for that. because they've ruined families. I've literally watched DCF because I've been involved since the mid 90s with them. I literally watched how DCF was able to make things change. Okay, but anyways, like I said, this isn't going to be a DCF talk. However, during COVID, watching how people reacted, like especially in Texas, like I ain't gonna protect other citizens, and how Trump started sticking up for them, and how so many people died and they tried lying and hiding, and even today they're still blaming liberals for that and Fauci and stuff like that. But I also, as I was like studying to do my lawsuits against, DCF, CPS, um, I started reading some, and I don't know how to pronounce um this professor's name out of Berkeley, but I started reading his books on constitution, and I really started reading some laws and ones that gave more people rights, like people in the LG whatever BTQ, you know what I mean. And and abortion case and stuff like, and I just like came to determine like we have rights. Everyone has rights, not just MAGA, not just racists. We all have rights as humans. As humans, we all have rights. As children, we all have rights. And I read a lot of his books and a lot of our constitutional law. And when you read them and you have the intelligence to decipher them, you are able to like, what the fudge have I been believing all my life? Abortion versus choice and everything. Now, look, I've said this straight out in my videos. I had 4 children. I kept all 4 of my children, and I love that. And I was a mother. I was a great mother. I love my children. I fought for my children, and I would have died for my children. And I was 100% a helicopter parent. I'm not one of those free range of children parents. Never, never. Even when my son walked to the neighbor's house to play with their daughter, um, which most of the playing was parallel playing because of their disabilities. Um, there was a gap between our house and a brook divided it, so he had to walk up the road because he couldn't walk through the brook. There was no little bridge or anything. And plus there was a bunch of woods and trees in between on the other side of the brook. So his mother and I would, and I want to say this was a lot around 99, 2000 maybe. So he was probably about 9, 10, something like that. But I would stand at the end of my driveway and she would stand at the end of hers and we'd walk there and walk back. I'm a helicopter parent. But my son was also, suffer from a mental illness. I was very protective of my children. That's why for 7 years I did not date. Not only because they had to get better, but because I did not want someone in my life that could potentially harm them or essay them or anything like that. I just did not want that. I wanted them to be older. By the time I got married, my youngest was like 10. So, um, but anyways, what I gathered from these people and reading the comments is they're just MAGA garbage who still to this day does not believe that Trump and his sycophants are not only protecting P3DOs, but grapists. Because I don't care what you say, and people will look the other way. But A court did find him to be a rapist. It was a civil court. It was a civil court, but the judge did say it was grape. It was SA. Yeah, maybe they couldn't have charged him criminally because of statute of limitations, but civilly it was extended. I'm not even sure. I'm assuming the criminal statute of limitations was over, and we all form our trauma differently and in our own time. When courts find now, I do think a lot of I do think a lot of courts are corrupt, a lot of them. And I do think sometimes juries can be wrong, but they're not always wrong. Not all of them against him were wrong. Not all of the courts against him were wrong. So I have to say this, Alan Ritchson does not suck. Actually, I applaud him. I applaud him for many things. I applaud him. And as I read comments from that twat, and she is a twat, she's an English twat. And I'll never watch anything she does again, whether it's about MAGA shit or not. I'll never watch her again because she's she's MAGA garbage. And um, you don't have to be in America and the United States. I'm sorry, America's multiple countries. You don't have to be in the United States to be MAGA. Because don't they call them maple MAGAs in Canada or something like that? I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But I applaud him for standing up for children. We have to hold people accountable for raping our children, as well as murdering them. I just see I did a video earlier today that talked about the murder of children in foster and adoptive care. It's becoming way too common, and no one is answering to it. And you'll see other videos where I believe CPS should be held accountable when they put children in a foster home that they didn't vet, or an adoptive home they didn't vet and watch and take care of. You vet them like you vet the parents. If you can find the parents undeemable, stop making foster parents a savior, because they're not. They're a place card. But Alan Richson, I know you probably won't see this, but thank you. Thank you for using your soapbox. I know that twat's comments were all MAGA garbage, saying, I'm not going to watch him anymore. I didn't realize he was so crazy. You know what I mean? He's not crazy. He's not crazy. Some of us opened our eyes and stepped away from MAGA and knew how devastatingly toxic and dangerous it is for our country. Thank you for speaking out and keep speaking out. And thank you. And if you can have more discussions about your bipolar and struggle, because I'm not positive if all the information I got, but it says that you didn't find out till you were 36 years old. And that had to have been a hell of a struggle, because I've had my children treated when they were like 4 and 5 years old, and received behavior modification from that age. We did chore charts, we did award systems. I did everything I could to get behavior modification instilled in them so they could cope with life. And like I've said, my son that has bipolar also had severe intermittent explosive disorder. If I did not get him set up from a preschool age to deal with his anger, he literally could have been on a clock tower. And if you people know what I mean, you understand what I mean. We have to start showing parents, start treating your children at a young age that are suffering with mental illness. Sometimes it is behavioral issues, and sometimes it's like PTSD that can be fixed. But a lot of it is going to be long-term medical struggles for them and medication. behavior modification and inpatient hospitalizations. So I, I would love to see comments on this one, especially because I don't think he's just picked up, a liberal in Hollywood stance. And I don't think he's just saying this because he wants to be good in with Hollywood. Because there are Hollywood MAGAs. Um, I watched one of the other day in a movie I mentioned in an earlier video, Riding in Cars with Boys. One of the worst MAGA people was in that. And I can't even look at him the same anymore since reading all the crap he spewed on Twitter. We need people to stand up and speak about atrocities in society, especially against our children. I can't be the only one, and I'm so glad he is. And I hope he expands on from the P3DO aspect of what's happening to our children and like Epstein Isle and the files. I want him to start talking about what Moses Farrow talks about, all the atrocities happening to children. Get loud, people. Our children, deep down, are reaching out for us to save them from the horrors they face and foster and adoptive care. And how these children, I don't know how these children ended up on Epstein Island to be victimized. But if parents are letting children just ride off with billionaires, well, somebody needs to fix that. There are bad parents out there. There are bad biological parents out there. That's true. If you're not protecting your children from P3DOs, you need to be fixed somehow. Okay. I don't know if there's much more I can go on about this, although, I am anti MAGA and I'm proud to say so. I am an independent, so I'm not like a progressive leftist. And from what little I've seen of Alan, I haven't seen that he's a progressive leftist. I think that's just a libtard, and they want to call anyone who's against Trump, right? I've been against Trump since COVID because I saw that they really didn't give a shit about people. Billionaires don't give a shit about us. Stop pretending they do. Elon Musk does not give a crap about us. He's probably going to end up with the biggest throne next to Satan. Maybe not. There's been a lot of evil billionaires that hoard their wealth against what the Bible tells you to do. Keep killing people by denying them U.S. aid. See how many ticks down in the depths of hell you end up. Remember the rich man yelling up to Lazarus and Abraham, "Give me a drop of water." There are some really great early century writers, and they did a lot of sermons on hoarding wealth. I took a lot of religious classes at my school, and I learned a lot about humanitarian and even what those early preachers were saying about that. The rich man watched Lazarus at his gate and came and went, never did anything to help him. And when he went to hell, it is believed, kind of like the good place, that you have your, for whatever little good you do on earth, you're rewarded on earth. And if you're not rewarded on earth and you end up a beggar like Lazarus, then you get your rewards in heaven. A lot of preachers preached that in the early first centuries, the ones that were closest to Jesus's teachings. So, Alan Ritchson, keep it up. Keep being a deranged person on a podcast is what they want to make you out to be. Some deranged liberal. Keep doing it because things need to be said. Enough to start changing minds. And listen, one thing I noticed a lot of these people said in the comments, they didn't call themselves MAGA anymore like they used to proudly a few years ago. No, they call themselves now, they're just back to conservatives. Um, why are you backing away from the MAGA moniker? But yet you still don't think he's a rapist or a P3DO? You just mad that he's hurting your finances, but you don't care about what he did to kids or some woman or multiple women? Because I think this has happened to way more women. See, harming women and harming children is like a taboo. You know what I mean? Having that evil power over a child where you harm them, it's taboo. Is that what you have when you have everything left in the world? Is that what you need to have? Is what doesn't want you? Really? They don't want you. They don't want you. They don't want you touching them. They don't want you on them. They just don't want you. We need to, as a society, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Are we all just becoming soulless, um, wealth seekers? Are influencers more important in society than humanitarians? All right, I'm going to end this. If you got anything to say, feel free to put it in your comments. Remember, this is fair use commentaries on stuff I've seen in social media, or I could be using it as education, instructional, opinions, or just entertainment. You can laugh at me. It's okay. I'm me. I'm strong in my ability to get stuff done. I know I'm here on this earth to fight devastation done against our children. I pray to God that in the last decades of my life, I can make change and children as a whole can breathe again. It only makes our society for our children and grandchildren better. When you ruin so many children in foster care, and you rarely hear a good outcome, you hear a lot of incarceration, crimes, repeat offenders that could have been saved if we just gave a damn. Thanks so much, people. Like I said, if you want to tell people about me, my majority of my content is about fighting CPS, fighting the corrupt court systems. If you know someone who's in need of a shoulder, need someone to talk to, I'm here. I'm here to help all I can. I've been advocating and helping, trying to help families navigate the rough and rocky waters of CPS, all the weapons they throw at you. I'm here. All right? Just tell people to come to me and I will talk to anybody. Anybody. If you're in an abusive situation, I have escaped and I have rebuilt my life. Come to me and I will tell you how. All right. And don't forget, going off to law school, probably not this fall because I just got in the game too late. But next fall, I will study up my LSAT. I will get that going. And I will try to get in a really good school. Thank you all for watching and come back. Have a great day. Bye bye.